My mother abandoned me with strangers when I was 11 years old. She told me she was going to Miami to handle some business and would be back in a week. She left me at the house of a woman named Carol, someone I'd never met in my entire life, gave me a quick kiss on the forehead, and drove off to the airport without looking back. 1 week turned into 2. 2 weeks turned into a month. And when she finally came back, ready to pick me up like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just disappeared for 32 days, I wasn't there anymore. Not in the way she expected. Because in that month of abandonment, something had changed. I'd experienced something I'd never had before, a real family. People who cared if I ate breakfast. People who asked about my homework. People who noticed when I was sad and actually tried to help. And when my mother showed up demanding her daughter back, expecting me to just go with her like an obedient puppet, I looked her in the eyes and said 3 words that destroyed her. I'm not going. My name is Riley, and this is the story of how 1 month of abandonment freed me from the worst person I ever knew, and how the sweetest revenge was simply choosing to stay away. Let me take you back to June 2012. I was 11 years old, living in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment in Seattle with my mother, Vanessa. I slept on the couch. She had the bedroom, which she needed for privacy, when her various boyfriends stayed over. My mother was 29 years old, but she acted like she was 19. She went out clubbing 3 or 4 nights a week. She slept until noon most days. She worked sporadically as a bartender, just enough to pay rent and buy whatever she wanted, which was usually clothes, makeup, and alcohol. Taking care of me was an afterthought, something she did when it was convenient, which wasn't often. I'd learned to take care of myself by the time I was 7. I knew how to make ramen noodles and sandwiches. I knew how to set an alarm and get myself to school. I knew how to forge my mother's signature on permission slips and report cards. I knew how to lie to teachers when they asked why my mom never came to parent-teacher conferences. She works nights, I'd say. She's really busy. The truth was, she didn't care. She'd never wanted to be a mother. She told me that often enough, usually when she was drunk or angry. I was 23 when I had you, she'd say. I should have been traveling, having fun, living my life. Instead I got stuck with a kid. She never told me who my father was. Some guy, was all she'd say. Doesn't matter. He's not in the picture. So it was just the 2 of us, except it never really felt like us. It felt like me, alone, with a roommate who resented my existence. I thought that was normal. I thought all kids lived like this, taking care of themselves, staying quiet and invisible so they wouldn't bother the adults. I didn't know any different. Until that day in June when everything changed. My mother came home in the afternoon, which was unusual. She was excited, almost manic, talking fast and packing a suitcase. I'm going to Miami, she announced. There's this guy, Derek, he's amazing. He invited me to stay with him for a week. This could be really good for me, Riley. He has money, like real money. This could change everything. What about me? I asked. It was a question I'd asked 100 times before in different situations. What about me when you go out all night? What about me when you spend the grocery money on new shoes? What about me when you forget to pick me up from school? You're going to stay with a friend of mine, she said, not even looking at me as she threw clothes into her suitcase. Her name's Carol. We used to work together. She said she'd watch you for the week. I don't know anyone named Carol, I said. So, you'll meet her. Don't be difficult, Riley. This is important. That's how I knew this was different. Usually when my mom went out or disappeared for a night or 2, she'd just leave me alone in the apartment. I was used to that. But a whole week was longer than she'd ever been gone, and apparently even she recognized that an 11-year-old couldn't be left completely alone for that long. 2 hours later, we pulled up to a small house in a neighborhood I'd never been to. A woman came out, maybe in her mid-40s, with graying hair and a tired but kind face. This was Carol. Vanessa, she said, and her tone was cautious. It's been a while. I know, my mom said in that bright, fake voice she used when she wanted something. Thanks so much for doing this. You're a lifesaver. This is Riley. Carol looked at me, and I saw something in her expression. Concern, maybe. Pity. Hi, Riley, she said gently. Come on in. My mother handed Carol some cash, $200, and gave me the quickest hug. Be good, she said. I'll be back in a week. And then she was gone, her car disappearing down the street, leaving me standing in a stranger's doorway with a backpack of clothes and a sinking feeling in my stomach. Carol's house was small but clean. She showed me to a guest room, which shocked me. I had my own room here, even if it was temporary. At home, I slept on the couch. I made up the bed for you, Carol said. Bathrooms down the hall. Are you hungry? I nodded. I was always hungry. My mother rarely kept food in the apartment. Carol made me a sandwich and sat with me at the kitchen table while I ate. She asked me questions. How old was I? What grade was I in? What did I like to do? Normal questions, but they felt strange because no one usually asked me things like that. Before I could answer much, a teenage boy came home. He was tall, maybe 16, with headphones around his neck and a basketball under his arm. Marcus, this is Riley, Carol said. She's going to be staying with us for a little while. Riley, this is my son, Marcus. Hey, Marcus said, giving me a nod. He didn't seem bothered by my presence, just accepted it and went to the kitchen to grab a snack. That first night was strange. Carol made dinner, actual dinner, with vegetables and everything. We sat at the table together, all three of us, and ate. Marcus talked about his basketball practice. Carol talked about her day at work. She was a nurse at a local clinic. They asked me about school, and I gave short answers, not used to this kind of attention. After dinner, Carol told me I could watch TV or play in my room, whatever I wanted. I chose to stay in the room, sitting on the bed, trying to process this new situation. It was just a week, I told myself. Then Mom would come back and things would go back to normal. But normal never came back. The week passed. My mother didn't call. Carol tried calling her several times, but the calls went straight to voicemail. I'm sure she's just busy, Carol said, but she looked worried. She'll call soon. I wasn't worried. This was typical Vanessa behavior. She got distracted, forgot about responsibilities, did whatever she wanted. She'd show up eventually. Another week passed. Carol was definitely worried now. She tried calling again and again. Nothing. She asked me if I had any other family, anyone she could contact. I told her the truth. There was no one. No grandparents that I knew of. No aunts or uncles. No father. Just my mom, and she was gone. Okay, Carol said, and I could see her making a decision. Okay. You'll stay here until she comes back. It's fine. We'll figure it out. And something unexpected happened. I started to settle in. Carol made sure I got to school every day. She packed me lunches, actual lunches with fruit and sandwiches and snacks. She asked to see my homework. She came to my school's end-of-year assembly, something my mother had never done. Marcus, despite being a teenager who probably had better things to do, was nice to me. He let me watch him play video games. He taught me how to shoot a basketball in the driveway. He treated me like a little sister, teasing but kind. And then there was Carol's sister Diane, who lived in the house next door with her husband and 2 young kids. Diane was loud and warm and constantly coming over. She'd bring her kids, and suddenly I was part of this chaotic, noisy, loving group. We'd have dinners together, all of us crowded around Carol's table. We'd go to the park. Diane's kids, who were 6 and 8, treated me like I'd always been there. For the first time in my life, I understood what a family was supposed to feel like. It wasn't quiet and lonely. It wasn't walking on eggshells around an unpredictable adult. It was noise and laughter and people who actually cared if you were okay. 3 weeks in, I was helping Carol make dinner when she asked me, very gently, "Riley, what's your home life usually like? With your mom?" I could have lied. I was good at lying, at covering for my mother. But something about Carol's kindness, about the safety I felt in this house, made me tell the truth. "She's not around much," I said quietly. "She goes out a lot. I take care of myself mostly." "What do you mean, you take care of yourself?" I told her. About making my own meals. About getting myself to school. About the nights alone in the apartment. About the boyfriends who came and went. About how my mother always said I was a burden, a mistake, something that ruined her life. Carol's face changed as I talked. She looked angry, but not at me. "Riley," she said carefully, "that's not okay. That's not how parents are supposed to treat their children. You know that, right?" I shrugged. "It's just how it is." "No," Carol said firmly. "It's not how it should be. And I'm going to make sure you're taken care of, okay? You're safe here." That night, after I went to bed, I heard Carol on the phone. She was talking to someone about neglect, about abandonment, about a child who needed help. The next day, a woman came to the house. She introduced herself as Ms. Patterson from Child Protective Services. She was kind but professional, and she asked me a lot of questions. I told her everything. About my mother leaving me here a month ago. About how she said she'd be back in a week. About how I hadn't heard from her at all. About what my life was like before this. Ms. Patterson wrote everything down. She talked to Carol privately for a long time. And then she told me that they were going to try to find my mother, but in the meantime, I would stay with Carol as an emergency foster placement. "How do you feel about that?" Ms. Patterson asked me. "Staying here with Carol?" I looked at Carol, who was watching me with those kind, worried eyes. I looked around the house that had felt more like home in 1 month than my apartment ever had. "I want to stay," I said. And I meant it. More than I'd ever meant anything. 2 days later, my mother finally showed up. I was at school when she came to Carol's house, demanding to know where I was, acting like she had every right to just take me back. Carol called Ms. Patterson immediately. By the time I got home from school, there was a CPS car in the driveway and my mother's car parked on the street. I walked into the house and saw her sitting on Carol's couch, and my stomach dropped. She looked tan and relaxed, like she'd been on vacation. She probably had been. "Riley," she said, standing up with a big smile like everything was normal. "Baby, I'm so sorry I was gone longer than I thought. Things got complicated in Miami. But I'm back now, and we can go home." I stood in the doorway, frozen. Ms. Patterson was there, and Carol, and my mother was looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to run to her, to be happy she was back. But I wasn't happy. I was angry. For the first time in my life, I was genuinely angry at her. "You left me here for a month," I said, and my voice was shaking. "You said a week. It's been a month." "I know, baby, I'm sorry. But I'm here now. Let's go home." "No." The word came out before I even thought about it. My mother's smile faltered. "What?" I said no. "I'm not going with you." Her expression changed, confusion turning to anger. "Riley, don't be ridiculous. I'm your mother. You're coming home with me." "Mrs. Chen," Ms. Patterson interrupted, using my mother's last name. "We need to talk about what happened. You left your daughter with someone who was essentially a stranger for what you said would be a week. You were gone for 32 days with no contact. That's child abandonment." My mother's face flushed. "I didn't abandon her. I left her somewhere safe. I had an emergency." "What emergency?" Ms. Patterson asked calmly. My mother fumbled for an answer. "Personal issues. I had to handle some things." "For 32 days? Without calling your daughter once?" My phone died. I lost the charger. I was going to call, she was lying. I could always tell when she was lying. Ms. Patterson could tell too. Mrs. Chin, I've spoken with Riley extensively. She's told me about her living situation with you. The neglect, the nights left alone, the lack of supervision and care. Combined with this abandonment, we have serious concerns about your ability to parent. She's lying, my mother said quickly. Riley makes things up. She's dramatic. Our life is fine. I'm not lying, I said, and my voice was stronger now. You leave me alone all the time. You forget about me. You tell me I ruined your life. You don't want to be a mom. My mother stared at me, and I saw something in her eyes. Not remorse or guilt. Anger. Anger that I was telling the truth, that I was making her look bad. You're being ungrateful, she hissed. After everything I've done for you. What have you done for me? I asked, and I felt tears starting. Carol's done more for me in 1 month than you've done in my whole life. She makes me food. She helps with homework. She cares if I'm okay. You don't care about me. You never have. The room was silent. Carol moved closer to me, putting a protective hand on my shoulder. My mother looked between us, and I saw the realization hit her. She was losing. She was losing control of the narrative, losing her daughter, losing the argument. This is ridiculous, she said, standing up. Riley, get your things. We're leaving. No, I said again. I want to stay here. With Carol. You don't get to decide that. I'm your mother. Mrs. Chen, Ms. Patterson said firmly. Riley is not going with you today. Given the circumstances, we're placing her in emergency foster care with Carol while we investigate this situation. You'll have the opportunity to work with us, to demonstrate that you can provide a safe and stable home. But right now, Riley stays here. My mother's face went red. You can't do this. You can't just take my kid. You left your kid, Carol said quietly, and there was steel in her voice. For a month. You didn't call, didn't check on her, didn't care if she was okay. You don't get to show up now and act like your mother of the year. My mother looked at Carol with pure hatred. This is your fault. You turned her against me. I didn't have to turn her against you, Carol said. You did that yourself. My mother grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Fine. Keep her. See if I care. She's been nothing but a burden anyway. She slammed the door on her way out, and I heard her car start and drive away. And I felt something I'd never felt before. Relief. She was gone, and I was glad. Ms. Patterson stayed for another hour, explaining what would happen next. There would be an investigation. My mother would be required to attend parenting classes and meet certain requirements if she wanted custody back. In the meantime, I would stay with Carol as a foster child. How do you feel about all of this, Riley? Ms. Patterson asked me. Scared, I admitted. But also, okay, I like it here. That's good, she said gently. You deserve to be somewhere you feel safe. After she left, Carol sat with me on the couch. You were very brave today, she said. I know that wasn't easy. Do you think she'll come back? I asked. I don't know, Carol said honestly. But whatever happens, you're safe here. For as long as you need. I leaned against her, and she put her arm around me, and I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was overwhelmed. Overwhelmed by kindness, by safety, by the feeling of being wanted for the first time in my life. The investigation took 3 months. During that time, my mother was supposed to attend parenting classes, maintain stable housing, and demonstrate that she could provide for me. She didn't do any of it. She missed appointments. She didn't show up for supervised visits with me. She called Ms. Patterson once to say she was too busy to deal with all this right now. It became clear very quickly that she didn't actually want me back. She just didn't want to look like a bad mother. She didn't want to be judged. But she wasn't willing to do the work to actually be a parent. Carol, meanwhile, officially became my foster mother. She enrolled me in therapy to help me process everything. She made sure I had everything I needed for school. She celebrated my 12th birthday with a real party, with cake and presents and Diane's whole family there. It was the best birthday I'd ever had. Marcus taught me how to ride a bike that summer. Diane took me school shopping and let me pick out my own clothes. I had my own room, my own space, my own life. And slowly, I started to heal. I started to understand that what I'd experienced with my mother wasn't normal or okay. I started to understand that I deserved better. After 6 months, Ms. Patterson came to the house with news. "Your mother has signed away her parental rights," she said. "She's agreed to voluntary termination. That means she's no longer legally your parent." I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was sad, because even though she was a terrible mother, she was still my mother. But mostly I felt free. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," Ms. Patterson said, "Carol can adopt you, if that's something you both want." I looked at Carol, who was crying. "I would love to adopt you, Riley," she said. "If you want that. You'd be my daughter, officially and forever." "Yes," I said immediately. "Yes, I want that." The adoption was finalized on my 13th birthday. Carol threw another party, and this time it was a celebration of 2 things: my birthday and my new family. I was officially Riley Morrison now, taking Carol's last name. I had a mom who loved me, a brother in Marcus, an aunt and uncle and cousins in Diane's family. I had a real family. The years that followed were the best of my life. I thrived in school. I made friends. I joined clubs. I did all the normal teenage things I'd never been able to do before because I'd been too busy surviving. Carol supported me through everything. She came to every school event, every award ceremony, every moment that mattered. She was the mother I'd always needed. When I was 16, I asked Carol if I could try to find my biological father. She helped me, even though it must have been hard for her. We did DNA testing and found him living in Oregon. His name was David, and when we contacted him, he was shocked. He'd had a brief relationship with my mother years ago and never knew I existed. We met him, and he was kind but distant. He had his own family now, a wife and 2 kids. He didn't have room in his life for a teenage daughter he'd never known about. It hurt, but not as much as I thought it would. Because I already had a family. I didn't need him. I graduated high school with honors. Carol cried at my graduation, proud and emotional. I got accepted to the University of Washington with a scholarship. I decided to major in social work. I wanted to help kids like me, kids who were neglected or abandoned, kids who needed someone to fight for them. During college, I volunteered with foster care organizations. I mentored younger kids in the system. And I started writing about my experience, anonymously at first, on blogs and forums for foster youth. My story resonated with people. Other kids who'd been abandoned or neglected reached out, sharing their own stories. I realized that my experience, as painful as it had been, had given me a unique perspective and a powerful purpose. After college, I got my master's in social work and became a licensed social worker specializing in child welfare. I worked for CPS, the same organization that had saved me. I became the person who showed up at houses to check on kids, who investigated reports of neglect, who fought to keep children safe. It was hard work, emotionally exhausting, but it was the most meaningful thing I'd ever done. Every child I helped felt like honoring that 11-year-old girl who'd been brave enough to say, "I'm not going." When I was 25, I was interviewed for a local news story about foster care and adoption success stories. I told my story publicly for the first time, using my real name. I talked about being abandoned at 11, about finding a real family with Carol, about how adoption had saved my life. The story went viral locally, then nationally. News outlets picked it up. I was invited to speak at conferences about foster care and child welfare. And my biological mother saw it. I got an email from her, the first contact in over a decade. The subject line was, I saw your interview. Riley, I saw you on the news. I can't believe you told everyone that story, making me look like a terrible person. You don't understand what I was going through back then. I was young and struggling and I did the best I could. You're so ungrateful. I gave you life, and this is how you repay me? By trashing me publicly? You owe me an apology. You owe me respect. I'm your mother. I read the email 3 times, feeling absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no guilt. Just a cold, clear understanding of who she was and who she'd always been. A narcissist who couldn't take responsibility for her actions, who saw herself as the victim, who demanded respect she'd never earned. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked her email and moved on with my life. She didn't deserve my energy or my attention. A few months later, I was giving a keynote speech at a national conference on child welfare. The audience was full of social workers, foster parents, advocates, and policymakers. I told my story again, but this time I focused on what came after the abandonment. When I was 11 years old, I said, my mother left me with strangers and disappeared for a month. When she came back, I made the hardest decision of my life. I said no. I refused to go back to a life of neglect and instability. I chose the family that had shown me love in 1 month over the mother who'd shown me nothing but resentment for 11 years. People ask me if I ever regretted that decision. The answer is no. Not for a single second. Because that decision saved my life. It gave me the chance to grow up in a real family, with a mother who actually wanted me, who supported me, who loved me unconditionally. It gave me the opportunity to heal from years of neglect and to understand that I deserved better. And it gave me the purpose I have today, helping other children make the same choice, helping them understand that they deserve safety and love and stability. My biological mother taught me what a parent shouldn't be. Carol taught me what a parent should be. And the difference between those 2 lessons shaped everything I've become. To every child out there who's being neglected or abandoned, you deserve better. You deserve adults who show up for you, who care about you, who put your needs first. And if the adults in your life can't do that, it's okay to choose different adults. It's okay to choose the people who actually love you over the people who are supposed to love you but don't. Family isn't just about biology. It's about love, commitment, and showing up. And sometimes, the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. The speech received a standing ovation. Afterward, dozens of people came up to me, many of them crying, sharing their own stories of abandonment and chosen family. A young girl, maybe 13, handed me a note. Thank you for saying it's okay to choose, the note read. I've been feeling guilty about wanting to stay with my foster family instead of going back to my mom. But you're right. I deserve better. Thank you for showing me that. I kept that note. I keep all the notes and messages I receive from kids who've been helped by my story. They remind me why I do this work, why I share my story even when it's painful. Because if my experience can help even one child understand their worth, understand that they deserve better, then everything I went through had meaning. Today, I'm 23 years old. I'm still working as a social worker, still fighting for kids who can't fight for themselves. Carol is still my mom, the best mom I could have asked for. Marcus is my brother, and we're close even though he's married now with a kid of his own. Diane and her family are my family. This is my life, the life I chose when I was 11 years old. And I've never looked back. Last year, I published a memoir about my experience. It's called Choosing Home: How Abandonment Led Me to Family. The book details everything: the neglect, the abandonment, the month with Carol, the decision to stay, the adoption, and my journey to becoming a social worker. I included my biological mother's real name. Some people criticized me for that, saying I was being vindictive, that I should have protected her privacy. But I disagreed. She made choices that had consequences. She abandoned her child. She neglected me for years. She signed away her parental rights rather than do the work to be a better parent. Those are facts, not attacks. And other people, especially other survivors of parental neglect, understood. They understood that telling the truth isn't vindictive. It's necessary. It's how we break the silence around child abuse and neglect. It's how we hold people accountable. The book became a bestseller. I did a book tour, speaking in cities across the country. And at every event, people came up to me with their own stories. Foster kids who'd found loving families. Adults who'd been neglected as children and were still healing. Social workers who were inspired to keep fighting for kids. And occasionally, people who'd made mistakes as parents and were working to do better. One woman approached me after an event in Portland. She was in her 40s, crying. "I was like your mother," she said. "Not as bad, but I was neglectful. I was selfish. I put my needs before my daughter's. But 5 years ago I got help. I went to therapy. I worked to become a better parent. My daughter and I have a relationship now, and it's good. But I need you to know that reading your book, hearing your story, it made me understand the full impact of what I did. It made me understand my daughter's pain in a way I couldn't before. So thank you. Thank you for telling the truth, even when it's hard." I hugged her, this stranger who'd had the courage to face her own failures and change. "Thank you for doing the work," I said. "Thank you for choosing to be better. Your daughter is lucky to have you now. Not every story has a redemption arc. My biological mother never changed, never apologized, never took responsibility. But some people do change. Some people do the hard work of becoming better. And that gives me hope." A few months ago, I got a letter forwarded through my publisher. It was from my biological mother. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. "Riley, I read your book. I don't know why you felt the need to write it, to expose our private family business to the world. You've made me look like a monster. People in my life have read it and judged me. I've lost friends over this. You've hurt me deeply. But I want you to know that I forgive you. I forgive you for being an ungrateful daughter. I forgive you for abandoning me, for choosing strangers over your own mother. I forgive you for writing lies about me. I hope someday you'll realize what you've done and feel sorry. I hope someday you'll want a relationship with me again. Until then, I'll be here, waiting for my daughter to come back to me. Love, Mom." I read the letter twice. Then I did something I'd never done before. I laughed. The audacity of this woman, to read my story and somehow make herself the victim. To claim I abandoned her, when she was the one who left me with strangers. To call my truth lies. To say she forgives me, as if I'd done something wrong. It was almost impressive, the level of delusion and narcissism required to write that letter. I didn't respond. Instead, I put the letter in a folder with all the other documentation from my childhood. Evidence of who she was and who she'd always be. And then I went to have dinner with Carol, my real mom, the woman who'd chosen me when she didn't have to, who'd loved me when I was unlovable, who'd given me the family I'd always deserved. We sat at her kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten my first meal in her house 12 years ago, and we talked about my book tour, about the people I'd met, about the impact the story was having. "I'm so proud of you," Carol said, and her eyes were shining with tears. "You've taken something painful and turned it into something that helps people. That's incredible. I learned that from you," I said. "You took a scared, neglected kid and turned her into someone who believes she deserves love. Everything good in my life comes from that month you took me in. From the choice you made to keep me. Best decision I ever made," Carol said, squeezing my hand. "You're my daughter, Riley. You always will be. That's the real ending to my story. Not revenge against my biological mother, though the public accountability felt like justice. Not reconciliation, because some relationships aren't worth saving. The real ending is this. I found my family. I found my purpose. I found my worth. And I help other kids find theirs. My biological mother left me with strangers, thinking she was dumping a burden. What she actually did was give me the greatest gift, the chance to find people who truly loved me. She thought abandoning me would hurt me. Instead, it freed me. And 12 years later, I'm happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. I have a family I chose and who chose me. I have work that matters. I have a life full of meaning and purpose. My biological mother has none of that. She has her delusions and her victim mentality and her inability to take responsibility. That's not my revenge. That's just the natural consequence of her choices. This is Riley Morrison, signing off. To the mother who abandoned me, thank you for showing me what I didn't want to become. To Carol, my real mom, thank you for showing me what love actually looks like. To every kid out there being neglected or abandoned, you deserve better. You deserve adults who show up, who care, who put you first. And if the adults in your life can't do that, it's okay to choose different adults. It's okay to choose the people who actually love you. That's not betrayal. That's survival. That's wisdom. That's choosing yourself. And sometimes, choosing yourself is the bravest thing you can do. I chose myself when I was 11 years old. I said, I'm not going to a mother who'd never really wanted me. And I said, I'm staying to a stranger who became my family. Best decision I ever made. If you're in a similar situation, I hope you find the courage to make the same choice. You deserve a family that wants you. You deserve love that's real. You deserve a home where you feel safe. And if you have to choose that for yourself, that's okay. That's more than okay. That's powerful. Choose the people who choose you. Choose the love that's real. Choose yourself. That's how you survive. That's how you heal. That's how you build a life worth living. And that's the real happy ending.